Hey guys, Walter Fedczuk here to tell you that Unicorn.com may be the world's premier esports betting site, but they're also your best bet for keeping up with all the esports you love. With their site's newest update, they've reinvented their Live Now system and created a TV guide style layout to find out when your favorite teams will be playing next. And if that isn't simple enough, they've even added a search bar to help filter it down even further. And even if you aren't a gambling fan, Unicorn's newest update is a must-have for any esports fan. And you might even discover your favorite new writer in their news section. We've got my man Drowlin with some excellent CSGO content, and you can find some fantastic articles from my lovely co-host, Chase Wassenar, as well. So check out the new layout at Unicorn.com, because there are few places where you can stay up to date on all your favorite esports, and Unicorn can help. Unicorn.com. Welcome to the new Sportsbook. Hello Internet, my name is Walter Ceades Fedczuk, and welcome me back to the Guess the Lines 2017 Summer Split EULCS Week 9 show. I had a week off, and I am incredibly happy to be back. I enjoyed some great League of Legends over the past weekend, and I'm ready to sit back down. I'm ready to reanalyze it. I'm ready to make you guys some more money, and I cannot think of anyone that I would rather be doing this with in this moment than my good friend and podcast co-host, Chase, RedShirtKing Wassenar. Chase, how are you doing today, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, you say great League of Legends week to go back on, and I look at Europe, and a lot of this made me a little sad. I felt like there were a lot of not like this moments where I saw teams finally put some things together, but it came at the expense of things that I was actively rooting to have happen. I think we'll get to one of those very soon in my downs for the week. But look, man, we're in the home stretch now. Now's when a lot of the questions, of what's really going to be on the line start to come together. We have we know the Mysterious Monkeys are getting relegated. We're almost certain that the Ninjas and Pajamas are getting relegated. So really, this is about playoff seeding. This is about, that kind of middle of the pack separating themselves. And in Group A, that might be done. I feel like in Group A, we kind of have our answer. But Group B has a lot of interesting relationships here that I am kind of fascinated to see how that continues to play out. And we might have a Group 10 that actually matters, Walter. Week 10 might actually matter. It's going to be great, in theory. But yeah, so that's me now. I've got some concerns, but I've got a lot to look forward to.
Week 10 does not exist. It actively does not exist. It is not something that I want to encourage its existence of in any way, shape, or form. But Chase, with League of Legends, there were games you can say that they weren't great League of Legends games. You can argue that point. I would say I was sports entertained. I'll put it that way. I think
sure.
We started using that sort of language to make up for the fact that sometimes games are not the best quality. But yeah, that's what I was. I was sports entertained this week, and I was impressed by a few teams, and I was depressed by a couple of teams, Mysterious Monkeys in particular. But with that being said, let's talk about the good. Let's talk about the bad. What was your up for week 8?
Yeah, I went back and forth on this, mostly because I feel like the couple teams that I instinctively wanted to grab are teams that I've been grabbing the last few weeks. Mm-hmm. Wanted to grab G2. I feel like I've done that ramp before on the show. Wanted to grab, the boys over at Fnatic because they had a great win. Feel like I've done that ramp before too. So instead, I'm going to give a little bit of space to give praise to a team that I criticized pretty heavily on my little manifesto episode, as it's now become colloquially called in our Discord, because Akegel had a much better name for the 5 things I think series than I did, and that's H2K. H2K, I really enjoyed seeing, especially Che, get the recognition that I thought he deserved in that series. I think that bot lane has been sneakily underrated this season, just because other AD carries have really come to the forefront. And H2K, when it works best, it's kind of a well-tuned machine. It feels like the whole team is running rather than just a couple players. But I think Che in particular stood out and made a case as to why he's going to be on my All-Pro ballot. I thought his Thresh was awesome. I thought his Trundle did a very good job in Game 2 of positioning fights and making sure that H2K was always fighting in their comfort level. Game 1 was just the quintessential H2K game. They won a fight at the 3rd minute, and they never looked back. They got 3 kills in the bot lane, and they just snowballed off of it. And it was absurd, and there was just nothing Splyce could do for the rest of the game. They could do no right, and H2K could do no wrong. But, Game 2 had, it had moments. There were multiple fights that they needed to win. There were multiple, things that they needed to set up, and it felt like the team was firing on all cylinders. I think that as a 5-man unit, they seem to have enough coordination with each other that right now they're in that top spot in Group B. And given the flaws that we're seeing in a team like Unicorns of Love, which needed 3 maps to get past the Mysterious Monkeys this week, that's never a great sign for how things are going with your team. Splyce had a very tough loss this past week, so comparatively, I feel like H2K is doing what they need to do. My biggest concern is that they don't seem to be playing tanks at all. We're in a meta that is being defined as the 3-tank, 4-tank meta, right? We're talking about all these, really tank-oriented drafts, and the closest H2K got to a tank was Gragas. They're playing things like, Gragas is a tank, but he's not like a Maokai tank or a Cho'Gath tank or the tanks that we're seeing other teams in other regions really rely upon. We're seeing things like they're running, Rumble and Jace in Game 1 and Rumble again in Game 2 with Orianna. They're very much sticking to what the last few patches were. And I wonder if that's because they felt like they didn't have to, or because they don't feel like they can play that way. That's something I'm concerned about as far as how they might match up against teams that really can use this meta effectively. But
so here's my problem with. I get we only are talking about week 8, so that's why you're like, Unicorns of Love had Splyce had all these flaws, and H2K looked fantastic. We're only a week removed from a beatdown on H2K by G2 that wasn't particularly close, and you ranted for 15 minutes about how the flaws that this H2K team has and all that. And my problem.
Yeah, no, I mean they can't win one behind. That's still true.
Okay.
That's as far as we know. That's still true. But they didn't have to play from behind this week. Again, Fnatic and G2 Esports were the only 2 teams that won convincingly other than them. So, I mean, I would give it to the other 2, but I've done those rants. So I want to give credit to H2K today.
I just don't want to create this image, and maybe it's with you, but I personally don't think that there is all that much of a difference between H2K and Unicorns of Love. I think both teams have their flaws, and Unicorns of Love at least can win from behind. Sure, they are falling behind to teams that they shouldn't have, and they make silly mistakes because they just like to constantly fight, probably when they shouldn't be fighting. But and then conversely, H2K, when they are ahead, they take off and they snowball the game and they don't give it up. But conversely, when they're behind, they might as well be the worst team in the league because they have no clue what they're doing. So I don't think there's that much of a difference there. But perhaps you did think slightly different. My up for the week, Chase. I'm going right for your heart. Ninjas in pajamas.
Come on.
Ninjas in pajamas. Getting a victory.
Okay.
They're my up for the week because Chase, and I know what your down is. I'm just gonna let you roll right into your down here. I told you not to get sucked in. I told you, and I can tell you're not upset.
You're a terrible fan. I just want you to know you're the only person who's like, hey, you should be less of a fan of your team when someone gets excited about the fact that they won a game. You are the rain cloud over any fandom that is not instantly winning a championship. I hate that mentality that you shouldn't get excited for your favorite team. It sucked this week being a ROCCAT fan. I'm not gonna lie. You lose the Ninjas in pajamas, and you now have a lot of questions about life, the universe, and everything. So yeah, they're my down. It was a really bad series. I don't want to take away from Ninjas in Pajamas. They were better than Origin. It's about time that they get a win. ROCCAT was the most likely team on the rest of their schedule to grab one against. So, that plus ROCCAT coming off of the high of beating, the Unicorns of Love and Fnatic, this season. I like there was about to be a letdown game. We were due for a letdown game. I get why this happened, but man, oh man, I'm worried, man. I don't. I feel like there are deeper problems that are with this team that are just coming to the surface, especially after they lose that game one. I just felt like they came back much more disjointed, a more unfocused draft. I felt like from them, a more unfocused, just approach to the early game. They fell behind and badly enough that they never really recovered. And Triple Inferno will do that, to be fair. But you'd think that would keep them close, and somehow ROCCAT just didn't have any plan, anything to do with those fights, any way to actually make the fights work on their terms. And I don't know, man. It's rough when you're losing because a 10-0-9 Nagne is popping off. Like, maybe you just don't understand how to use vision to properly ensure that you're going to be safe when you go for roams, when you're trying to make plays. They just didn't have it this week, and it's tough. It's tough. I think that you've certainly got to look this offseason. I think that it's safe to say that the team has not progressed under Grabs the way that we would hope. I think that might be a change that needs to go. We never really know behind the scenes how much coaching is having an effect on things, but I think it's clear that this is not getting any better. I think that cleaning house and that, let's see what we have, and maybe Freddy122 is a potential coach. Who knows? He's been a late addition that I think players seem to like. So that might be a thing moving forward. Who knows? But this is not working. We've mentioned here on the pod before that Betsy probably isn't worth it as a long-term asset. So that's really not working. You can take or leave Pride Stalker at this point. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing why this guy is an LCS caliber jungler and should be signed to a contract at the start of 2018. But your mileage may vary. Let's keep Wadid. Let's keep our favorite, everyone's favorite random Korean. Let's keep Hjarnan as our veteran guy. Faxi, if he can win lane once before the end of the split, you can keep him too. Just once. Just want him to win once. One time. Can he win once? No?
Probably not. I mean...
no.
Yeah, definitely not this week, so...
No, this is not going well. This is a concern. But you know what? It's fine, because we're safe, essentially. Unless the Ninjas in Pajamas go 2-1 against Misfits, G2, and Fnatic, they're going to relegation. ROCCAT's going to be fine. We'll come up with a 2018 plan, and it'll be totally different than the 2016 and 2017 plans, I swear. This time will be different. I believe this time has to be different. Please. Because if not, then I don't know what I'm watching for the next few weeks or why. So, 2018, let's do it, fam.
I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. I don't have much faith or hope for ROCCAT, unfortunately. That being said, my down of the week, I'm just gonna say Misfits and Splyce, because anytime they play against the top 4 teams, they look like they're on the edge of like finally being like, okay, we can beat these teams, and then just get knocked back to reality. Misfits more so than Splyce. Splyce obviously making a coaching change after this week, firing Givas, and still out there looking for one. These two teams are Mendoza line. Like, they're the essence of mediocrity, and you have to be better than these teams to make the playoffs, and the other 4 teams in Europe aren't. And that's kind of disappointing because I don't think either of these teams, they're both very, very, very flawed. And that doesn't make them particularly good because they have these flaws, and it does not seem like either team has really done anything to adapt to adjust to fix them. So the off season will be very interesting because this is probably going to be your like fifth, your first round matchup in the gauntlet will be these two teams fighting each other, and then they will do what they do best, which is collapse against one of the top 4 teams in Europe in the second round and begin their off season early. I hope they like golf. I don't know. Do Europeans in Germany golf a lot, Chase? Is that a funny meme?
It's there, not as much as you'd like it to be for the meme.
No one under 25 golfs, anyways.
No, absolutely
it
not.
Doesn't happen. That being said, speaking of under 25 and not golfing, we have games this week because it's week 9 in Europe. We have games. North America, it's their last week, but it's not the last week in Europe because it's only week 9 and they need to have a 10-week season because one day, way in the distant past, this man was walking through the hills of Greece and he tripped on a rock and he said, in 2017, all European LCS weeks will be week 10, and wrote it in this stone carving. And someone on the EULCS League Ops team was on, months ago was hiking through these hills in Greece and tripped on a rock and saw the EULCS must be 10 weeks in 2017 written on this wall and said, this is a sign of divinity. I must accomplish this. It needs to be a 10-week season. I hate this. I don't know how many times I can say I hate this. And finally accept that it's a reality. But that being said, it is only week 9 for the European LCS. We have some games this week.
Yeah,
we have some not very particularly interesting ones. There's a couple that are like, maybe I want to pay attention to. The first one, Mysterious Monkeys versus Splyce. I don't have anything to say about this series. This is if I'm awake and I want to turn my computer on and want to put my headphones in and want to play Hearthstone or do anything else and have this be background noise, this is the equivalent of that game. It's I just need background noise. Am I wrong? Should I want to watch this for anything exciting or maybe, I don't know.
I mean, to define exciting, are you excited? Should you be excited about Splyce versus the Mysterious Monkeys in terms of the product that they are putting onto the Rift right now? I don't think it's necessarily going to be a high-quality League of Legends game. Mysterious Monkeys had their moments last week. I think that their Game 2 win over the Unicorns of Love was solid. I think they did what they needed to do. I think Yuki is continuing to be a decent AD carry in the EULCS. I think that, the good news for them is that Exile is so bad in lane that even Koski was able to get a laning lead, and which is something they just never usually have, and it just meant that if they could get Kikis ahead enough, they they were at least relevant. But Splyce is a team that I called that this coaching decision almost had to be done when I was doing the VOD review on our lovely Discord, which you guys can join if you click the link in the description. I think this is a great example of the grass is always greener. They thought, oh yeah, we're just going to move on from Yamato Cannon. The system didn't work this one split. Forget the fact that we got there in the summer and got to that second split. Now we're at the point where we're beyond him. He's not getting us to grow anymore. Let's go get this new guy, and he'll create a system. And what I noticed more than anything else is that Splyce don't have a system anymore. We used to define Splyce as a team that had the, mostly the mid-game scaling, waited for the big team fight. You had guys, Kavi was playing things like Jhin. You had Wonder on these split pushers. It was a lot of 1-4 in particular, and they knew how to execute that really well. And then you look at their drafts from this week, and it's disjointed. It doesn't play into their strengths, or they're at least not using it around the map in that way. Wonder's being put on split pushers, but they're not committing. Senkux's Galio in game 2 didn't roam once, which is kind of absurd. Like, almost by accident, your Galio should be split pushing at some point, and it never happened. And this isn't the first time that I'm saying this about Splyce. I was saying this about Wonders Jax just a couple weeks ago. So, I don't know. I don't know how we're at the point where they don't understand how to utilize something that used to be a classic Splyce composition. But now they're going to have to find someone who can. They're going to need to find a coach in a very short period of time who they can have step in. It is not very likely that teams are going to get a guy like Quay who can just jump in right away and achieve results, because this also isn't Fnatic, where there are players on this team who have such big personalities, such a clear mental understanding of the game because they're veterans and have been there to such a consistent extent that they can just say, wait a second, let me play like the 3 or 4 champions that we know I'm one of the best in Europe on, and let's just make that work. There isn't an easy answer here for Splyce. And I think that is, I'm going to use the word problematic. I don't think it's a death sentence. I'm less willing to go out like you are and say that, Misfits and Splyce are completely mediocre. I think that there are strong points to them, but they are, I believe, a step back from where the 5 and 6 seeds were last split in Europe. I feel like this was a significant step back from Splyce last split, where Splyce last split was, decent because they had a system. It's just that system didn't really hold up when tested in the playoffs, collapsed after that game too. Now I don't know what Splyce is other than an assembly of players that theoretically should work well together, but just don't seem to have all the pieces clicking at any given time. It's rough to be a Splyce fan right now. But hey, this should be a good bounce back. It's the Mysterious Monkeys. They're not very good. I can't imagine, Amazing is going to be someone who super punishes Trashy. It's not really what Amazing does, so you're going to get away with some things on that end. You should send Senkux is a better laner than CosQ. You should have Wonder be able to handle Kikis, though Wonder has looked surprisingly bad the last couple weeks. I'm concerned about that, but, it should... If he returns to form at all, this game should be pretty easily in Splyce's favor. So I have the line at Splyce minus 400.
This is not how I expected this week to go. I said Splyce minus 220. I'm still recovering from my sabbatical. I'm clearly not thinking straight. It's Splyce minus 370.
There we go.
So you're gonna take this one. Yeah, I mean, I hope to be sports entertained by this, but this just feels like it's going to be not funny haha mistakes, but more just kind of depressing, oh god, these are 2 professional League of Legends teams in Europe, and maybe instead I'll watch, LCK VODs because there are some banger matchups over there and the quality is better. So, I don't know. I'm very disappointed by Splyce. And I'm waiting for them to reascend into that, summer 2016 kind of performance where they were this very cohesive unit. But I agree, it seems disjointed. But I think all of these players are good. I think Trashy's the weakest player on this team, but the meta's right in his favor. He can flourish in this kind of meta. It does seem like they are lacking kind of an identity. But when we speak of Splyce, I also compared them to Misfits earlier on.
Well, wait, hold on. What's the line for 3 games? Because I totally think that Splyce could screw up a map in this.
3 games are stalling for time, plus 125.
Okay. I'm going to come back to that. Because I get the feeling, I'm looking at this schedule, I don't think we're going to have a lot of value.
Value.
Yeah. So Splyce screwing up a map here in this series seems like something we might want to come back to. But let's keep moving.
Yeah. So, like I said, comparing Splyce to Misfits earlier on, it is only appropriate that we now move on to G2 versus Misfits. I'm still like confused by G2 because they look like they want to be good. They look like they are about to reascend to where they're supposed to be, but then there are mistakes and it's not very clean, and it's almost like when something is tarnished, when there's like a piece of, a nickel or something and there's like tarnish on it, and you start to clean it, you don't get every single speck of it like on your first pass or your second pass. Like there's still some marks on there. That's what G2 feels like a half clean nickel. And I don't know if they keep like setting the nickel down and they're like, okay, like that's good enough, and then someone comes by and is like, no, that's not good enough. Like the fans and us come by and say, no, you gotta polish it more. So then they go, it's like, do another couple wipes. Okay, that's good. No, and I'm waiting for it to get back to that like pristine, almost newly minted nickel. Can they get back there, Chase, or are there just too many bad habits that they've picked up in the past couple weeks that have sort of eroded that confidence that you have in them?
I mean, I'm surprised you're as down on G2 from this week as you are. I thought that what we saw in week 7, and I talked about a little bit on my little personal episode, is just that this G2 team has been playing much better over the last couple weeks. I feel like, Trick is someone that we were pointing to that, certainly needed to get himself going, that needed to find champions he could feel comfortable on and enable the rest of his teammates on. I feel like, they had, a couple hiccups in their series against Vitality. They lost that second map, which wasn't particularly ideal. But Ninjas in Pajamas, they did everything you could have really asked for. Game 2 was as close to a perfect win as you get without actually having a perfect win. Though it becomes a lot easier to do that when you get Cho'Gath and Zach and LeBlanc, and the enemy team doesn't know what they're doing. And they're also the Ninjas in Pajamas, which, any decent team should be able to handle quite easily. But look, are they perfect? No, I don't think that G2 are perfect this season. I don't think they're looking quite as strong heading into the playoffs as they did the last couple seasons, of course. They've have, I think the memories of what they did in the middle of this split, and especially early on this split, are going to linger for a bit. But they're picking up speed at the right time. They seem to be getting better and better each week. I think that Expect looks awesome. I think Expect has had secretly a great season. He's been one guy who's been consistent, wins, losses, whatever. He's been playing out of his mind.
Yes, he has.
So I hope that he gets credit. I think that Sven is still Sven, and I think maybe we forget sometimes how good Sven is at the AD carry position. He is absolutely terrifying in lanes, especially on the right champions. And, Perks seems to be in his zone. I feel like he's very confidently able to assert himself against most of the mid laners in the league. It's just going to be a matter of whether they have the rotations in them, whether they have the ability for Trick to be comfortable. And luckily for them, I don't think Misfits are a team that counters what G2 is doing right now. Man, I want to like this Misfits team so much, as you know. Now I'm a little personally invested since I predicted them to do so well before the season started. But when I remove that blinder and that, desire to see them be good, I see a team that is really struggling, especially right now, to find an identity. They had one, which was just give Power of Evil all of the resources, literally all of them, just all of them. And they've realized now that that's not going to win when the playoffs roll around, which was an accurate distinction for them to make. I think I wrote an entire article on Unicorn about how he's a great player and putting all the eggs into his basket has some value because of how strong he is, but then he makes a couple of mistakes and suddenly you've lost the series.
Right.
What they've been doing recently as far as pure distribution, as far as where Maxlor's been putting his pressure, I think has been more well-rounded. And Maxlor, by the way, having a great season. Guy's been very good. I think underrated in terms of his consistency on his roams, in terms of his consistency initiating in team fights. That game 1 Maokai was really good. I feel like he's been undervalued because so much of what he's done has been to set up Power of Evil individually.
Yes.
And now that we're seeing him get to spread out a little bit more, I think we're seeing that enough of that had to do with Max Lord being good, rather than simply turning on a guy who was really, really good in Power of Evil. But Alfari looks off and got absolutely destroyed by Ceades in both of these games. I think that, we saw Caps just tear apart poor Hans Sama every time he got a chance to roam. Turns out Shadow Assassin Kane can be pretty fun, and got a buff on this next patch that we're going to be watching starting this week. So that's really fun, potentially, if you enjoy Kane shenanigans, which I do. But poor Hans Sama, we're learning if he gets camped and Alfari's not doing anything, well, then you kind of stuck going back to your old ways and giving Power of Evil all the resources, which doesn't work. So they're in this kind of quagmire where they can't go in either direction because the tools that they want aren't working, and the tools that they have, they can't single-handedly do it.
Quagmire is that they didn't do it soon enough. If you want to make this kind of wholesale change, you have to do it at the beginning of the split. You can't just arbitrarily decide halfway through, like, okay, yeah, this thing that we've been successful with, well, it's not going to win us a championship, so let's reinvent the wheel halfway through the split. You can't do that. You've already instilled into these players that entire split, all your boot camping and training, your training camp before the season. All right, this is how we're going to play, guys. We're going to, constantly roam. And I understand patches, champion meta changes, those all will affect those kind of things. But go back to our previews. What did we want to see from Misfits? We wanted to see Hans Sama turn into the next Forgiven. We wanted to see them put that faith in him. We wanted to see them put a little bit more faith into Max Lord, into Alfari. Like, this was what we wanted. We wanted to see them move away from just relying on, Cacao and Power of Evil, and letting these younger players, these second-year players, really find themselves. And they've stunted their growth through this decision of going halfway through the split of let's just keep piling on Power of Evil. Let's just keep piling on Power of Evil. And now they're stuck with it. Now they are, like I said, reinventing the wheel with 3-4 weeks left to go. Of course it's not going to all of a sudden turn around, and Hans Sama is not going to be putting up 20-0 in 10 games, and Alfari is not going to know exactly every single perfect situation for teleports and all these things. Of course not. To expect that is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, but I guess I would urge people to not go too far in the other direction. Just because they made this decision a little bit later in the season doesn't mean that it's not the right decision to make.
No, it is.
This is a decision that I think needed to be made, and we still do have, they have this 4 or 5 week period. That's half a season, Walter, in order to try to figure some of these things out. And it's better to do that now when you have some time. You have this cushion between you and a non-playoff spot, because ROCCAT's not climbing up the ranks. That's just not happening. So I think that this is a fine decision to make. I'm not as worried about the time crunch as you. I think we've seen teams change more about their overall macro strategy in less time. I think the problem is that the tools that they need to do it are not doing their end of the deal. Alfari's supposed to be this great laner. He was a great laner last split. He didn't need a whole bunch of ganks in order to be someone who was winning lane consistently last split. This split, he's losing lane on average. That has nothing to do with, we haven't coached him in terms of how to, make use of these resources. He's not doing well in the early game. Negative 182 gold differential at 10 minutes right now. That's an individual problem. I have individual problems with how I think that Ignar has taken a step back in terms of his ability to roam around the map. I think their vision game has taken several steps back. So I think that...
Another thing that I brought up in our preview episode.
Yeah, no, I understand. You were the pessimist with them. I was the optimist.
That's fine.
Reality has lent more towards the pessimist interpretation. So I'm going to have to eat some crow on that. I think that we should not punish Misfits for making the decision that they did to kind of make the switch. What we should punish them for is the fact that they have several pieces that should be operating in order to make the switch, that should be making the transition easier, that are not doing their part. And that's what makes this tough, is when you're not setting down enough of the groundwork that gives you the freedom to make some of these changes, then you're kind of stuck in a situation where, just to put that number in perspective for Alfari, only Faxi is a worse laner right now in the league, and they're within 10 points of each other. The next worst is Odoamne at -81, so more than 100 gold.
Odoamne, good God.
Yeah, right?
That's a weird one. That's
Yeah.
strange.
I only illustrated to point out just how far the gap between Alfari and the next closest top laner is.
Yeah.
And when you have that, and you have Ignar taking a step back, and Hans Sama is not necessarily this isn't necessarily a great meta for the AD carry to be your game changer. It's tough, man.
I'll save my thoughts for Hans Sama for after the season, because I have some very strong feelings about how they treat him and how they're using him.
That's right.
That being said, where do you think the line is?
I have it at G2 -260.
Yep, I am misusing and abusing my predictions this week. I said G2 at -180. It's G2 -250. So
Yep.
Chase is gonna get another point here. Here we go.
Misfits plus what?
Misfits plus 185. Stop it.
I'm not.
No.
Look, you have always given me crap when I ask you about the when I forget to give you the underdog lines, I should say. I believe there was something about a spreadsheet that needed to be filled out.
There is, and my spreadsheet is currently filled out. 3 maps plus 110.
Okay.
3 maps plus 110. It's not. This could be a good series if Misfits decides to show up, but
We only need one Power of Evil pop-off game.
I do not believe in a Power of Evil pop-off game in this meta. Not against Perks. Not when Perks might be playing the best League of Legends of his career.
That's bold. That is a bold statement right there. As someone who watched Caps in the 2016 summer season. But sure, yeah, look, it's not a great sign.
Perks is playing the best League of Legends of his career. I'm not saying he's the best mid laner in the LCS right now. I'm saying he's playing the best.
But I think Perks has played it better. I think he played better this time last season. During their undefeated season, in which Perks was like the star of that team.
But here's the thing: he was the star in terms of he's making all the plays. Now he's still making all the plays, but he's also making his teammates better, in my opinion. That they spent the entire spring of him playing like Orianna, who is, kind of a very supportive team setup type champion, and I see a lot of that in this play where it's not necessarily him making just these. He's making these, fantastic 1v1 out duels and everything, but now he's roaming. It seems like he's the one that's directing roams more now, and he's the one that starts making a rotation up, and then Trick kind of comes along and, is like he was doing his Gromp, and like now, maybe it's like Trick calls it and says, I'm going to finish this Gromp, you start heading up now, whatever, but just visually, it seems like Perks has turned into more of a complete player. And it's been just wonderful to watch, because I like watching complete League of Legends players. And I don't think there's a whole lot of them in the West as a whole. But speaking of not whole, H2K and Vitality. I don't think either of these teams are a whole, complete League of Legends team. It's just one is very, very good, and the other one is kind of mediocre. So what are your thoughts on this series? We already talked about H2K a little bit. Is there anything really to say about Vitality at this point? Like, if they go on a really nice run here, they could make the playoffs, but have we learned anything more about Vitality over the past 8 weeks? Has our opinions changed in any way, shape, or form?
This Vitality team could be half decent if Joko knew what he was doing. Which, I will say, that's another one of those players we thought would get better who unfortunately haven't. Joko's going to be on my list for that, because I feel like his pathing hasn't gotten any smarter. He's not necessarily having as many stupid deaths this season, but I don't think that he's doing as much to help his team either. Back last blood he was the first blood king. That's certainly not been the case here. But look, man, Nuke has been playing quite well. I'm not sure how he's adjusting to this particular meta. We saw him on two champions that I thought were kind of less powerful on this patch, and Corki and Jace in the mid lane, very poke siege oriented. That seems to be what they like to do nowadays. I guess that's fine. I'm a little bit worried when it comes into some of these super tank teams, but they've got pieces, right? Nuke playing very well this split overall. I think he's had quite a banner season. If you look at his numbers, just straight off the board, given how bad the rest of his team is, I think he's done a lot for himself, and I think he set himself up well. I think we're seeing a lot of, Cabashard looking like the Cabashard of old to a certain extent. He's winning his lane. His teleports are coming in on point. We saw surprisingly 2 great steelback games coming through. It's just that this team has no presence in the early game. They have no real ability to dictate the game on their pace. And when you have the game going so much in your opponent's corner, and just to put this in perspective, Vitality's second worst early game in the league with a 43.0 EGR. Only the Mysterious Monkeys at 36.2 are worse. The competition near them at the bottom of that pile are ROCCAT and, of course, the Unicorns of Love. So one of those teams is not like the others, but that's really just not a category you want to be in. It's become quite clear, and they don't seem to have that easy ability to turn things as a result. They need that one big team fight at about the 25 to 30 minute mark that then allows them to get the objectives that they need, and then they could, kind of manufacture the wave management that they don't seem to have, or the kill pressure that they don't seem to utilize in the way that they should. Talented players, I think that we're seeing why these players have been re-signed now to LCS contracts repeatedly, despite Vitality consistently underperforming. It just seems like it took them a little bit too long to buy into the Yamato Cannon system, and while they're executing some fundamentals a little bit better now, it's not nearly unified enough to keep up with the best teams in the league. And I think that H2K right now is among the best teams in the league. They're a great regular season team because all you need is a slight lead and they can just snowball massively. And this is a series in which they're playing a team that doesn't do very well in the early game. So H2K should have plenty of opportunities to snowball. There should be a 2-0 pretty clearly in H2K's favor. So I had the line at H2K minus 600.
Okay. I just do want to say, Joko is 5th in first blood percentage.
Yeah, sure. But 1st to 5th is a huge gap. That's a concern when you look at just the consistency with which one is grabbing it.
It's under 50%, so just slightly under half their games. I would say he hasn't improved at a rate that is required, but I also just don't think Vitality is much of an early game team, period. So I don't know. My opinions on Vitality really haven't changed much. Like, they're discovering what their identity is. They've sort of started to figure it out, and Yamato Cannon has done a great job in I think, taking everyone back to the basics of League of Legends. And that's the thing. He's like baby's first coach. And I think that was exactly what this team, now, in retrospect, that was exactly what this team needed. And I think it's worked out fantastic. I'm glad that he's been able to get the team to this point. Now, next split, it'll be interesting to see how they then progress to the next point. Where do they end up after, next spring? That's kind of intriguing to me.
My only thing that keeps me from saying that is they're not actually winning that many more games than they won last split. Like, they're not tangibly doing any better in the standings than they were last split. So if we want to attribute like this huge growth, it's looking a little better. The losses don't look as bad. The wins look a little bit stronger. But it's not actually translating. Like, they're not in the playoff hunt. They're still going to be the 4th place team. They're still, Vitality still have huge problems. Like, they're still not going to be, they're not going to have a much higher record than they did last split. I don't think that.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, are we saying we should be really, super happy about the 4 and 6?
No. I don't think we should
have
be.
to play the
No.
three teams above them in the standings.
Okay,
Like,
no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying like Vitality had such a great season, but I am saying I am
he said
seeing.
it's a fantastic season. He said it's going great. He's got the plans and coming together.
Yes, because they actually look like a team and not 5 solo queue players. That's the difference, is they actually look like a team. They are moving around the map as a team. They are focusing on objectives as a team. This isn't 5 solo queue players like they were in the spring. If you watch any Vitality game from the spring, it was 5 different people with 5 different agendas, all trying to accomplish different things on the Rift at every single second. Now, it's not. So to say, oh, we can't applaud them for that type of improvement, and it's a team game. Of course they should play like a team.
I just want to bring it down a little bit. I feel like you're going a little bit hard on. I want to bring it down to
fine.
They look like a team, but they don't look like a good team. They don't look like a great team. They look like a team. They're going to finish 4-9 this season, which is going to be 1 series better than they were last split. And we're going to look back at them, and we're still going to feel like there are big changes they need to make if they want to take a step forward. So let's put this all, in perspective to the league as a whole, rather than simply comparing to who they were as a team last split. Of course, they're better than what they were last split. Almost anything would have been. They got very lucky that they were in a group with Origin of all things. So it's just a different kind of ball game. They're now a below average team that's not really going to threaten any of these top 3 teams, I don't think, at this point.
Fair enough. They've got 4 games left, and they're only 2 spots out of a tie with Splyce.
3 games left, but yes.
3 games left. Yes, I apologize. 3 games left.
And it's all against the top 3 teams, whereas Splyce has a game against the Mysterious Monkey still coming. So
I'm just saying, hey, whatever.
Sure. I have H2K minus 600.
You're going to get this one as well. I have H2K at minus 300. It was H2K minus 526.
There it is.
Unicorn's
with me on this one.
Yeah, Unicorn's been with you the entire time. The Unicorn has failed me. That's what I'm at here. Fnatic versus ROCCAT.
Vitality plus lines.
Vitality plus 350.
Thank you. Now we can move forward.
Fnatic versus ROCCAT. I have nothing to say about this series. I have absolutely nothing to say. It's nice to see that Fnatic is playing meta 80 carries. Thank you, Reckless. And they're playing them better, and they're playing better since they got from Rift Rivals. Okay. That's about it.
Are fans allowed to throw in a white flag before the match? Like, can a ROCCAT fan perform an act of mercy?
No, because Riot doesn't allow surrenders.
Ah.
Nope. You have to play it. You have to watch ROCCAT get bloodied and beaten down by Fnatic.
Hey, man. 1-0 against Fnatic so far this season. That's all I have to say about that. The Kingslayers, baby. 2-0 against teams that are in first place in the group. Actually, that's not true because Unicorns are in second right now. But you know what? Kingslayers, baby. They're the one in Fnatic's 9-1. Look, Walter, I have to give myself something. I have to give myself a little something.
No, you don't, because life is meaningless and everything's depressing and sucks. No, you need to be depressed because ROCCAT is a bad team. Listen, we need to compare we need to compare seasons to the current season and the teams they're playing against, not who they were. We need to compare them to what's existing right now.
Yeah, this season, they're the one in Fnatic's 9-1. I already went on my downs rant. Yeah, this seems terrible. There's no doubt about that. This should be a one-sided series.
Good. And I mean, Fnatic is good. They've been playing fantastically.
We did beat Fnatic. That is a fact. Can't take it away from us. That is a 2017 summer. It is going down in the record books. It happened. We all have to live with it.
Every time a ROCCAT player dies in this series, I'm going to send you a text message.
Like, come on.
Oh, Betsy died again. Pride Stalker failed a gank every single time because you need to get beaten back into reality about this team.
You really just hate people having fun rooting for teams that aren't good. Like you know what you are? You are what happens when Bill Simmons was complaining about the trust the process tweets when the 76ers were finally having fun with the fact that they have this talent. You're like, screw you, you haven't won anything. How dare you enjoy life? How dare you have fun? You're not a title winner. Then you shouldn't have fun with anything, ever, for any reason. Let me have fun. We won a series this season against Fnatic. I should be allowed as a fan.
I just feel like
enjoy that.
On the RedShirtKing manifesto, you got a little bit too high up on your high horse, and you're like, yeah, they're amazing. This is great. This is fantastic. And then like
I said they were a bad team and spent most of it talking about Unicorns of Love not being very good. You didn't listen to the manifesto. That's what I'm
listen to it. I did listen.
You saw the title Kingslayers and then didn't pay attention to the fact that I didn't talk about ROCCAT.
I listened to it.
It was 30 seconds of ROCCAT talk. You know that's not what
it felt like a century. Let me put it that way. Where do you think the line is on this?
Fnatic minus 800.
With it, you're going to get the week. I said Fnatic minus 600. I was really off this week. I was just incredibly off. It's Fnatic minus 909. ROCCAT at plus 500.
Sounds about right.
Okay, Unicorn. I get it. It just wasn't my week. I need to go redo my NA lines then, I think. NIP versus Misfits. Anything you want to say here? Anything you want to see? Anything in particular? Anything at all?
I mean, you got your chance to give the Ninjas in Pajamas some love earlier, so this is when I'll say, taking off my ROCCAT fan cap, putting it to the side for a second. Congratulations, Ninjas in Pajamas. You proved what I already knew, and what I hope most people on the internet already knew, which is that you're not the worst team in LCS history. You're a team that, unfortunately, because of a 13-game season, this is probably the only win you're going to get. But you got your win. You proved that you can put together an LCS split or an LCS series in the 2 multiple games in a row. I thought that Nagne played well. I think HiQ has become surprisingly solid this split. I think that's going to be one of the underrated narratives that's kind of been under the surface here because the rest of the team has been bad, but he's actually been pretty consistent. I think he's expanded his pool since since last split. I think that the Ashen stuff that he did is still very good. I felt his Jhin, especially in this series, looked great. So I think that HiQ will be an LCS AD carry regardless of whether he's on the Ninjas in Pajamas next split, depending on how that promotion series goes. I think he's earned a spot. I think that Nagne is fine. He had a great Talia game. Prophet is starting to do things that aren't split pushing. So, yeah, seems fine to me. I have, unfortunately, none of that really is going to matter because now they're playing a team that actually knows what they're doing. And while Misfits have their flaws, they also have the best player on the Rift in this series. And when we talk about games against bad teams, that usually is the difference maker. So,
it's usually enough, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going with Misfits minus 400.
Again, you're going to get this one. I had Misfits at minus 250. It's Misfits minus 256. Ninjas in Pajamas at plus...
Wait, so you get that one, right?
No, you get it.
Wait, what did you have?
Misfits minus 250. You had Misfits minus 400. It's Misfits minus 526.
Oh, 526. I thought you said 256 for a second.
526. Nope.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Nope. 526.
Is the Pajamas plus what?
350.
Okay. There's not a lot of value.
There's absolutely no value.
We might do 2 smart money bets. There's not going to be 3. They simply don't exist.
Probably not. Yeah. Looking ahead to the last game, Unicorns of Love versus Splyce.
Yeah.
Unicorns of Love lost a game to Mysterious Monkeys. I'm disappointed.
Yeah. I feel like all of my greatest fears about the Unicorns of Love are coming to fruition right now, and it's one of those where it's like I wish I'd been wrong. Like, the league is more fun if I had been wrong, and that these things that I thought were flaws heading into Rift Rivals, coming out of Rift Rivals especially, were things that were maybe mild blips on the radar. But teams are learning right now that if you can camp Chachi and you can keep him behind in the early game, take away his ability to snowball on you. Exile certainly isn't going to snowball on you. And a lot of these mid lanes, Samix is a great player, but he's mostly great because his team fighting is so absurdly good. He's very rarely just pure out bullying you in lane and outscaling you to oblivion from there. That's not necessarily Unicorns Love style of play, since they like to roam a lot more and skirmish a lot more than that. So stop Chachi, take your win against Exile. Like, that's been enough. That's been enough for teams to take maps off of Unicorns of Love, or even victories off of the Unicorns of Love over the last couple weeks. And that's hugely concerning for me. I mean, just think about how flawed we've talked about ROCCAT. You've been super harsh to them. I got super sad about them earlier, and yet they beat the Unicorns of Love less than 2 weeks ago. That's where we are with this Unicorns of Love team. They're losing maps against the Monkeys because of how easily they're able to be countered. They're letting some of these team fights turn against them. It's harder for them to force the fights that they want because their vision is getting significantly worse than it was. It seems like they're really just not executing the fundamentals. I think so much of what I loved about them in the first split is that they had a great understanding of value, and they understood how to set up waves so that whenever they want to fight, they immediately got a tower off of it or a dragon or whatever objective it was that was going to be available to them. Yeah. They constantly had that sense of getting more every time there was a trade, and that's just not happening because they're not setting up the vision for it. Mm-hmm. They're not dictating enough of the pace early. They're the third worst early game team in the league right now. That's a concern to me. Chachi's not winning his lane hard enough to give them an obvious power spot in the early game no matter what else happens. He's just taken a step back this split. I fear that with this tank meta, it might be a little bit further back. I was not impressed by his series. I think it's still his game 1 was quite good. His game 2 showed there are flaws. We'll see ultimately where I guess it ends up, but this is a must win. I think for the Unicorns of Love, not just because these two teams are tied at 6-4, and therefore there's a lot on the line in terms of seeding. Whoever loses this series is almost certainly out of contention for the number 1 spot. Unicorns of Love would keep pace with H2K. Splyce needs it to make up a game. But I feel like Unicorns of Love are in a better spot to make that jump than Splyce are. Splyce right now in disarray. Absolutely. They don't have a coach. They don't have an identity. Like, the Unicorns of Love can at least fall back on, we know how to team fight super well, and we have the best cleanup AD carry in the league right now at Samix. We have a guy in Exile who, say what you will about his early game, and you can say a lot of terrible things about his early game, like he still knows how to scale. Chachi is still going to be a dangerous threat. Xerxes is still someone who can have a significant amount of map pressure. I have a lot of things that I still believe the Unicorns of Love can do, even as they're struggling. I don't know what Splyce can do right now because I'm not sure Splyce knows what Splyce can do right now. So that's how I think this is going to come down. I have Unicorns of Love at -175, but I think the line is going to be closer than where I think the series goes.
I'm gonna trust Unicorns of Love. I'm gonna trust them to figure it out. And even if it's not this split, even if it's not with Worlds, they are gonna figure out what they need to do, and from there, I trust Sheepy. They've made this work. They've made changes. They've trusted in guys. Like, none of us thought Samix was gonna work. None of us. Not a single person thought Samix was gonna work. And here he is, as you said, the best cleanup AD carry in Europe. Like, he's been fantastic. He's been phenomenal. And they somehow continue to make things work and find these gems in the rough. And they took 2 risks on young players in Exile and Xerxes. And while Exile might not eventually work out, Xerxes has. And I think some of Xerxes' weaknesses now are coming from that he doesn't have the super stable top and the super stable mid anymore. Because, reality is that you cannot have, Visit Chachi maybe shouldn't have been MVP last split. He played fantastically and he deserved it. But to request that he stay at that extremely high level for every single game for the rest of his career is unlikely.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see where things go. I know they probably won't win a championship with just how good Fnatic and G2 have been this year. They still have, potential matchups with H2K. And this is a team where I'm like, okay, we know what the flaws are. We know that everyone's figured you out. How do you adapt? And I think Unicorns of Love have been fantastic at adapting as a whole. Maybe not adapting, individually game after game after game, but as a whole, when they realize it's time for us to change and to evolve, they do that. Maybe not as quickly as we'd like, but they do. They do figure it out. So, again, I'm willing to see where Sheepy is going to take this. We've constantly been like, Sheepy doesn't know what he's doing. These players don't know what they're doing, and they prove us wrong time and time and time again. So now I'm waiting to be proven wrong again, but I understand that there's a chance it might not be until next spring. So you said minus 175. I said minus 200.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get the sweep.
There we go. There it is.
It's UOL minus 172.
Yep.
Splyce plus 130. 3 maps at plus 100.
The EU analysts finally remembering how to analyze EU. I feel like I've been vindicated with a 6-0 on this one.
Listen, I'm looking at all these lines, and these lines are really fishy in how close they are. So I'm gonna have to petition. I'm gonna have to petition the World Guest Alliance organization to check some tests. I assume the next time we come in, a doctor will be here who want to administer a P test. I don't know, but there is something inherently fishy here that I'm not quite liking.
How dare you?
I
I just want to point out that 2 weeks ago you were talking about, oh yeah, I'm totally making my predictions work based off of your predictions, but it's totally not cheating though. It's not what you think. And meanwhile, I have one good week. I'm still behind you in the overall standings at 8 and 9 because you got to opt out of 2 weeks that I could have desperately used to catch up here. And so now you're going to try to take that away from me? No. I'm taking this.
You can take it all you want. The guy who beat Joe Horan, who beat Manny Pacquiao, can take that win all he want. I still can file a complaint with the World Guest Alliance organization and have this travesty investigated.
Wow.
But that being said, congratulations. You get the point. It's now 9-8 in the overall score. And we have to pick some smart money bets. Before we get to actual week 9 smart money bets, after last week, after week 7, we went 2-1. That makes us 11-10 on the split, and we have a net positive of 338. So yeah, we didn't do week 8. I get it. My apologies, but for 8 weeks out of a 9-week season, plus 338 is not too bad when you look at last split, and we had a lot of trouble with Europe. So
yeah, no, I mean, this is going fine. I'm happy with this. I'm not happy with this slate of games as far as trying to find value. What's the Unicorns of Love 2-0 over Splyce?
2-0 over Splyce. Let me check that real quick.
Because I agree with you that I think Unicorns of Love are more likely to put it back together than Splyce is right now.
Plus 175.
I like that.
Okay.
I think that we're at a point right now where last week we saw all of the better teams were mostly getting 2-0s. Teams that were, I understand the Unicorns of Love dropped a map to Mysterious Monkeys of all things, so I might regret this, but I think that Splyce has set themselves up for a letdown game.
Fair enough.
They beat Unicorns of Love the last time they played. I think Unicorns of Love will have adapted to that. I think that'll be interesting. I
agree. I'm okay with taking that.
I also want to take Misfits and G2 to go to 3 maps.
Yep.
I think that's one of those things where maybe, if you're not as high on G2, and I know that you're not as high as I am on them, you can say that they've been overperforming the last couple weeks. Mm-hmm. It's very unlikely that they get a 2-0 here, especially when Misfits have been doing, Misfits have some strengths to them. We didn't have enough time for it on this episode, but I think you would be very surprised at how all these mid laners compare when you look purely at the numbers. Senkuk's right now in a lot of ways is is keeping up with Perks, and when Sencux is doing it, Power People can do it. It's just a very interesting wasteland of EU mids right now. So I think Green Apps is the safest bet to go. It just I mean, we're looking at a whole bunch of guys that are close, and yet
I wouldn't call that a wasteland. I would call that European mids are back, baby.
But they got so manhandled at Rift Rivals. Like, think about how badly that went with Phoenix One. I don't know.
A tournament that doesn't mean anything. It means nothing in the grand scheme of things. No one cares.
It is. We'll see. People have 2 more weeks to really assert themselves as we are the best team in the region and by a significant enough margin. Fnatic is the one who will also be able to do it, but beating ROCCAT doesn't mean anything. Can we call it too? We have to force a third.
I mean, the only one that makes sense is Mysterious Monkeys versus Splyce going to 3 maps. That's the only other one that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's plus 125.
I mean, I guess we can do that if you want. Like, I'm not...
Doesn't bother me. We can do just 2, but I think that's just as likely as G2 Misfits going to 3 maps.
Sure, we'll take that, because that'll give us the if the Unicorns of Love manage to struggle against Splyce, at least then we have a chance to get some value.
That's fair. So we're
not a great value.
So we're gonna take Mysterious Monkeys versus Splyce to go to 3 maps at plus 125. G2 versus Misfits to go to 3 maps at plus 110. That is gonna be a long Thursday. And Unicorns of Love to go 2-0 over Splyce in the final game on Saturday night in Week 9, which isn't the last week of the European LCS season because everything is awful. But we hope that nothing was awful here and that you guys enjoyed the podcast. You guys can follow us on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on YouTube if you like the video style content. You can also follow the podcast at Rough Drafts Pod on Twitter and on a variety of other social media sites as well. You can follow myself at Ceades_LOL I'm very disappointed this week in my guesses. I need to do better for Week 10. I need to hold on to my lead going into the playoffs because weird things happen in the playoffs. So you can find some of my thoughts on that as well as reactions to the games. Chase, where can the good folks at home find you?
You can find me at RedShirtKing. I love talking to you guys about anything I said today. I think that I was very happy to see the reception to my 5 Things I Think episode. It seems like a lot of people enjoyed that. That might be something I do in the future. I'll see. I don't know if I'm going to do one this week necessarily, but I will see if that's something that I can do for you guys if you just want to hear some kind of off-the-cuff thoughts. Is kind of from a wider range of topics than I can usually get to in an individual episode where you have to focus on game by game. But look, man, I feel like I'm back in touch with where Europe is right now, and I am looking forward to seeing how this week goes. I hope that the teams that really should set themselves apart this week actually do set themselves apart this week. I'm tired of half measures. Be the teams that I believe you should be. There 5 should be blowouts this week. I want to see how many of them we can get to. Let's see what happens, boys.
Well, luckily for me, we still have one more episode this week where we're going to talk about the final week in the North American LCS. Maybe I can get this point back and then, only have to deal with Week 10 in Europe. So come back tomorrow for our North American LCS episode. And until then, goodbye, Internet.
You can follow the Rough Drafts Podcast on all your favorite social media sites. Twitter at Rough Drafts Pod, Facebook.com/Rough Drafts Pod, SoundCloud.com/Esports Rough Drafts, YouTube.com/Rough Drafts Podcast, as well as on iTunes by searching for the Rough Drafts Podcast. The Rough Drafts Podcast is supported by our lovely Patreons at patreon.com/Rough Drafts Pod and by viewers like you. Thanks for listening, and goodbye, Internet.